So he's talking about attention. He's talking about our attachments, the sense of I am, this continuity that lies within us mysteriously, which it really is extremely mysterious. It's one of those things that's caught my attention lately, is this sense of I, which seems so constant, but nothing else is. You've never had to wonder. You never had to wake up in the morning and go look for your I. Like where am I? What? It's right there all the time, and it doesn't matter what state you're in. You can change your gender, you can keep your gender, you can grow old, you can stay a toddler. All these things. The I has remained constant, although everything around it changes. And so that's a very big clue. If I have to tell you that's a big clue, we need to work harder. That's a very big clue, that you have a sense of being that is fundamental, essential to you. And that is the real you. That's the divine in you. That's the presence of God in you. And so our questioner this morning, he asks, well, how do I get at it? How do I get to this essence, this essential I? And Maharaj says, you need not get at it. You are it. Now, this is one of the most mysterious statements, I think, that can be made, because how do you investigate that? How you are it? Well, how do you know what you are? I really hadn't figured that out, or I wouldn't have had a really good answer to that question even a year ago. I'm not sure I have a good answer now, but I have an answer that I'm playing with and I'm following, of this sense of being absolutely silent and not having the mind tell you what you are, not having circumstance or the senses tell you what you are, but in that quiet of the mind, in the silence, without thought. There's when you pay attention to who's wanting to know or who's asking the question, then in that you get a sense. You get a sense of this self, of what you are, when nothing is telling you. That's when you know what you are. When nothing outside of self, outside of your isness, is telling you what you are. And that's how you come to know that you're infinite, that you don't have a boundary. Because when you start paying attention to attention, you realize that the attention being paid attention to comes within that sphere of existence, and that sphere of the mind, as it were, of our definitions and our stories and whatnot. But you can see that yourself extends way beyond any definition in the mind. And since everything is in mind, right, and you have access to your entire mind, it makes you omnipresent as well in your world that you've created, this world in the mind. The fact that you can wander anywhere in it and be anywhere in it at any given time is interesting in what it points to, something to think about. All these little things that we pass over in a day without thinking about or realizing are the reasons for our sleep. They're the reasons that we're not able to see God, even though that's all we're seeing. And so catch yourself, if you can, during the day. Watch the things that go through your mind. And if some of them go through your mind and you haven't investigated them, but you've accepted them, those are usually the most delicious morsels. We are, Bindu, on the last question in section 1.
Oh.
Just before obsession of the body, or obsession with the body, I think. That's where I mark. Oh my goodness, you know what? We're not. I don't know. I've used this book several times and now I've got beginning marks everywhere.
I thought we were on page 11, right?
Page 11. What's the question?
Can you start, Maharaj, with the question? Yet I cannot see how can anything come to be without a cause.
Yes, I think that's the one.
Which section is it?
Number 4.
Number
Yes.
4. Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Section number 4. Okay.
Real world.
All right. Wow. Oh, okay. Well, there's. Okay. Did you get the permission, Priya? All right. Well, anyway, yeah, he was asking good questions up there about your essential nature and how to find it. Of course, in this real world beyond mind, this is where we were going with that whole idea anyway, that you live in a mind. You don't live in a world. And the universe that you've placed outside of you is actually within your own mind. And all of us in class this morning are actually in each other's mind and in the universal mind. You see, one of the things that ego does is it cuts out a section of the universal mind and calls it its own, owns that small section of universal mind. That's why Vivekananda, as he went up in his planes of consciousness, became aware of more and more and more and more. The higher in your consciousness that you go, the purer the mind is, the more access to this big mind, to this infinite mind, to this universal mind you have, or it becomes apparent to you. It's always there. You just don't see it because you've tied yourself into one corner of it, a corner that contains the story and the attributes that you're attracted to, that you've held close to yourself. But in your mind, that's where you live. Everything is a thought in there. We take each thought and we classify it, and give it definitions and put it in stacks of other thoughts related to other thoughts, which are related to other thoughts. But it's all just thinking. And all of your senses are just thinking, thought waves. Everything carries information, and that information is unique. And so we make it separate. We categorize it as being separate. But in fact, in its essence, it's all the same. It's just rittis, waves in the mind, waves of thinking. And those waves of thinking are always caused in a disturbed mind by the sense of me and mine, the sense of the small self. And since that sense of me and mine is not who we are, it disturbs the mind. And so the mind is racing around trying to define this new idea of me and mine. What is this? And so it begins playing around and starts attaching itself to ideas, colors and favorites and aversions and stories and histories and memories, all of those things to create this little itty bitty self. And so our questioner here, we'll go up one question beforehand because the second one's a follow-up there. He says, yet I cannot see how can anything come to be without a cause? He says, when I say a thing is without a cause, I mean it can be without a particular cause. Your own mother was needed to give you birth, but you could not have been born without the sun and the earth. Even these could not have caused your birth without your own desire to be born. It is desire that gives birth and gives name and form. The desirable is imagined and wanted and manifests itself as something tangible or conceivable. Thus is created the world in which we live, our personal world. The real world is beyond the mind's ken. We see it through the net of our desires, divided into pleasure and pain, right and wrong, inner and outer. To see the universe as it is, you must step beyond the net. It is not so hard to do so, for the net is full of holes. And these holes are what I was just mentioning earlier, these things that we have accepted as true long, long, long ago, probably in our childhood, and have never gone back and picked them up and said, wait a minute, that's a little bit too straightforward. What does it actually mean? As I was sharing last week, I was going through that big struggle last week because I was getting very comfortable with the notion of here and now. And I found myself saying it a lot to myself and describing my situation quite a bit as I was walking around. But I realized that here and now is purely conceptual. That and we I mentioned it last week, but this here, where is here? We have never known where we were in our entire life. We've never known where we are. You see, and the reason for that is because we narrow our scope so much so that we think we know where we are. If I narrow my scope to Lafayette, Colorado, I know where I am. But if I open up my scope wide enough, I have no idea where I am in the universe, right? I'm on a planet. Where is Earth in the universe? I have no idea. And that's not even a stationary place. It's spinning. So my place is always changing. So even at this moment, here is constantly different. It's never here. And yet here is such a stationary experience for us. It's like, yeah, I'm right here. And the funny thing is that no matter where you can imagine yourself being in the universe, wherever that is, it would still be here, even though it's a radically different here than this here. And so it really is a meaningless statement that somehow we've garnered a lot of meaning from. And now is the same thing. What is this now? You know, you have two choices in thinking about time. If you're going to say the past and the future are real, then you're going to have to say that now is not real. Because at what point does the future become the past? It's an instantaneous change. The closer you would look, the smaller that sliver would become. So if the past and the future are real, then the now cannot be real. And if you're going to say the now is real, then your past and future can't be real. Because the only thing that ever is the now, is right now. And so you see, when you start questioning things that sound very simple and very clear and to the point, they give us a false sense of confidence in our delusion, a false sense of existence in our ego self, in this limited self. And so this exercise of just, yes?
I didn't get what you meant by saying if past and future are real, present is not. It's with respect to present that we say past and future.
Well, but there's no, where are you when you say the present? If you've got a past and a future.
I get the fact that we can say past is not real and future is not, and you live in the present, and the present is a continually changing moment. But I don't understand how you say if the past and future are real, the present is not. That I'm not getting the logic of that.
Okay, well, how are you going to find the present? At what point does the future become now? And at what point does the now become past? That part, if you start to go looking for it, that transition between future and past, you would see that there's the closer you look, the smaller it would get. You would never find a sliver between the future and the past that is the now. Every time you looked closer, you would realize the future instantly becomes the past.
So we're just, okay, sorry, Swami.
No, go ahead, go please. No, this is great.
So
what were you going to say?
The now that is continuous and that just goes on and on is what you're saying.
Well, what I'm saying is that, yes, that you get your choice. And this is the problem with the first choice. If you say the past is real and the future is real, then there's no way you can say the present is real, because there's no space. There's no space for the present between past and future, right? That transition from future to past is instantaneous. And the closer you would look, the smaller it would get, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're going to believe in the past and the future, which many of us would say we do, then you've got a problem, because you've now disallowed the experience of present. And so I'm saying that to point out that past and future probably aren't real. They're purely conceptual in the mind. And if you believe that the moment is real, if you believe that now is real, then you can't believe in a future or a past, because all you ever have is a now. And the future is a projection in the mind based on given circumstances. And the past is a collection of memories up until that moment. But you can't demonstrate either. You can't demonstrate a past or a future, right? You can just know constant change. And so he says, what do you mean by these holes? These holes in our assumptions, and how am I going to find them? Maharaj says, well, look at the net and its many contradictions, like the one we were just talking about. Just look closely at what you think, of how you think, what you've assumed. Take a close look at your assumptions. You do and undo at every step. You want peace, love, happiness, and you work hard to create pain, hatred, and war. You want longevity, and you overeat. You want friendship, and you exploit. See, your net as made of such contradictions. See your net as made of such contradictions, and remove them. Your very seeing them will make them go. This is that beautiful notion that Swami Prabhupada brought to my mind, that taught me that this awareness, this is really what we're going for in our practice, is this constant awareness of awareness, so that nothing slips by. Everything is caught and looked at and observed as it is, and then let go. There's no resistance. You don't try and garner only these thoughts or only those thoughts, and you don't try and grab on to good ones and push away bad ones. Because to do that, you have to stay in mind, because in mind is where everything is assigned its value, right? So you stand outside of mind, you don't use the mind at all. You simply observe it, watch it come, watch it go, and you see its natural rhythm. And when you separate yourself from it like that, you can see its patterns. And you can realize that many of the things that you've taken refuge in, probably most of what you've taken refuge in, is nothing but a pattern of thought that's familiar and therefore comfortable, therefore reassuring, but a lie, which is why they call Satan the great liar, in the deceiver in the scriptures. And what is Satan? Satan is your ego. Satan is the personification of ego. The ego is always looking for the particular, and the particular always divides. And that division causes selfishness, and all vice is born of ego, right? We eliminate ego, we move toward oneness. All virtue is defined by oneness, by unity. And so this Satan, this tempter within us is our ego. It's our self that stands up and says, I'm independent, I'm separate from God, I'm separate from the universe, I'm separate from everything around me. I am my own man or woman. I make my own rules. And here we go. Everything is mine. And unknowingly, we accept a horde of karma. And that responsibility that binds us to that load of karma is what causes our suffering and all our troubles. Any of them, name any of them, they're all because of that, because of ego. And so, yes.
This metaphor of net and holes, does that correspond to Thakur's metaphor of net, where we are all bound and caught, and only few people can get out of the net through the holes in the net, but very few people can do that. Is that the same?
Yes, it would be. It's the same, even the same as the net in Jesus's parables, which is very similar to Thakur's net. Yeah, it's the same net. Yes, this and ego. Yeah, ego is that net. It's the thing that binds us. It's our love of a story that defines us, that we attach to it, and that attachment makes us believe we're responsible. And that responsibility begins our story. The story of life that requires the past and the future. All of our ego actually is formed completely of the past. The ego comes from memory, and from that memory it looks at the moment and sees it hungry, sees it lacking something because of attachments from the past. It's missing those things, and so then the future becomes your plan for acquiring your desires. So desire is your future, attachment is your past. And your now is just rarely experienced. The normal person spends his life bouncing back and forth between the future, his desires, and the past, his attachments or her attachments, and very rarely being present, being in the now. And that's why we have to use the mantra. we're trying to anchor ourselves in the present moment, and to do away with the past, because the past is our samskaras. It's the binding things, and they are the thoughts that create desire in our minds, that stir dissatisfaction within us. And we try and throw away the future. The future is our desires. They come from having an ego. As an ego, we're limited and bound. So we feel a lack, we feel an imbalance. Why? Because our nature is immortal and infinite. And so we can feel something's wrong, so we're always trying to fix it. And since we've identified ourselves as being mind and body, we try and use mind and body to fix our problems. And the problem with that is that mind and body are temporary, and everything they can conceive of is temporary. And so we find ourselves perpetually insecure, hungry, needy, and confused, not knowing how to fix this life, what to do with this life. So he's saying, just start paying attention. Start finding your thoughts that aren't helpful, the ones that aren't meaningful, and look at them. And he says, just by looking at them, because you are the whole, that attention, that I am, is God. It's not separate from God. It is God. And that's putting that attention, that purity of attention on the moment, on your thought or on your delusion, whatever it is, on your question, is enough. You just by being of the nature of God will comb out all of the tangles of mind just by paying attention to them. Because especially when you've reached that space of quiet mind, the ego you're not buying into the lies of the ego. And one thing you'll find, and may have found already, but as you go on in spiritual practice, it's stunning, absolutely stunning, how many lies we tell ourselves in even a half an hour. If you look at all the lies that you tell yourself in a day, and if you're at the moment are confused about that or thinking, what lies, this is the call to that attention. This is why you have to watch your mind, because your ego is lying at all times. It is lying to get what it wants. That's this whole discernment practice, going in and looking closely at what's happening. Why do I feel that way? Where did that thought come from? How is that possible? Is that true? Of course, it's my go-to story, but that pizza day, the whole day was fine. I was walking down Polk Street. It was a beautiful day. I loved it. I was happy. I was content. I was in San Francisco as a brand new monk. I was, all excited about everything. It was wonderful. And then I smelled pizza. And suddenly the day wasn't perfect because I didn't have a piece of pizza. And then it got worse because I was a new monk. I had no money. So suddenly I was unhappy. Oh my God, I'm never going to have money for pizza whenever I want it. But then I thought, oh, wait, Swami gave me $20 for Christmas. And I still got that in the card on my desk back in the monastery. I'll walk back to the monastery and get my $20 and come back and get pizza. So I do all of that. So you see, again, just to draw it out, because it tells the story perfectly to me. The fact is we're content. Life is perfect. But then some sense comes into us, some feeling, some sensation, and it reminds us of an attachment. It reminds us, in this sense, it was the smell of pizza that reminded me that I loved pizza, that made me imagine a piece of pepperoni pizza, all greasy and drippy and horrible for my heart and well-being, and how much I loved that. But I didn't have any. So what did I need to do? Well, I had to create a future, because I had to come up with a plan. How do I get money for pizza? So I draw up that plan, And I set about it. And I walk to the monastery and I get that $20 and I get back down to Escape from New York Pizza on Polk Street in San Francisco. And I buy myself a piece of pepperoni pizza. Don't tell anybody that a Hindu monk was eating pepperoni pizza on Polk Street. So, that's the whole thing. So you see, life is perfect. Then comes an attachment, which is triggered by a sensation in the moment. And that association between the sensation in the moment and an attachment to the past fuse together and become a lens that you look through the moment through, and looking at the moment through that attachment and that memory that has been brought to mind by sensation, I find the moment to be imperfect. And this creates a desire for that perfect moment. But I forget that I was already happy before I smelled the pizza, before I attached to a memory. I forgot that the day had been perfect for me. And instead of returning to that mindset, that understanding, the day is perfect, what did I do? I said, the day needs pizza. So then I literally, desire forms, and desire causes the need for future, for the concept of future. So the mind sets up a plan for manifesting its desire into the present moment. And that's our slavery. That right there is a snapshot of why the sages tell us we're enslaved, because you have no choice at that point but to go, because of your habits and your belief about being body mind. You have no choice but to get to work, hike all the way back to the monastery, get that $20, hike all the way back again, and buy that pizza. And then you get your anxiety because you were like, oh my gosh, it was $5. Now I've only got $15. I can only have 3 more pieces of pizza and I still got 11 months until Christmas. What am I going to do? And so anxiety comes because, oh my God, I can't have pizza whenever I want. A very simplified version. But do you see? This is what happens in your life times a million during the day. Constant arising of sensations, constant arising of attachments, a constant arising of dissatisfaction, a constant, planting of desires, and then 1,000 plans for a future that's necessary to bring them all about. How are we going to bring all these things about? And a limited set of resources for planting to get your desires fulfilled. Oh my God, I need more. I need more. I need more. Who's going to take care of me? What's going to happen? And life becomes a misery. You're tied to the grind wheel and you can't get off. You can't break free. What's happening to me? And it all comes down to just smelling pizza. That's all it comes down to. And not letting that smell of pizza just become part of a beautiful day. How could a day get better than to be sunny, warm in San Francisco, a monastic, and the smell of pizza on top of that? How perfect. See, that's the right way of thinking. Whatever the moment brings adds perfection to it. Wonderful. Oh, wonderful. Welcome. Come in here. This is great. Don't let it spur any need for something different or more. Don't resist what arises in the mind. Don't attach to it and let it take its place. It rises and it falls and goes forward, and the world is perfect as it should be. But all of these other things inside, summed together, create a hungry world, almost ready to eat each other.
How about Maharaj?
Yes.
This another resident who's become my friend, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and they fall that day, and I find out, and you feel bad. And I try to sit by her and talk to her, but the whole time I was feeling bad, really inside.
Well, that must have been very helpful to her for you to sit there feeling bad the whole time. You see, I'm being facetious, but you see why feel bad? It came, it went. Now she's sitting next to you having her lunch. She probably doesn't even remember falling. But you're sitting there feeling bad the whole time. Why? How did that help you help her? It's good to have that sympathy. It's good to have that empathy, but it's not good to hold on to those things, to make those things defining things. It's like they come and they go. When they happen and we can do something, it's our nature to do something, and we will do something, right? But we don't hold on to it. We let it pass. Let the moment remain pure, always pure, and things come through it, like smells through the air, right? If you get a bad smell in the room, the air's fine. There's just a smell in it. So that will settle out. That will go away. Why? Because it's not the nature of the air to smell badly. And so it's the same with us. You know, the moment brings in lots of smells and whatnot, but they all pass. It's all fine. Why? Because our nature is bliss. Our nature is love. Our nature is wisdom. And by being attentive to the moment, we release that innate wisdom from ourselves, from within. We release that unconditioned love from within. And it flows out like it always does, but this time it flows out evenly and equanimously, without a need, without a hunger. It just flows out. And in your attention, you become aware of the moment and everything that it's placing before you. And you manifest. You manifest what? You manifest God, because that's what your nature is. You manifest the divine. And if you do that well enough, clear enough, freely enough, if you allow yourself to do that freely enough, you have a Jesus or a Buddha, you know, or a Rama or a Krishna or a Ramakrishna or a Holy Mother. All right. So it's, yes.
I have a question.
Please.
Exactly about your pizza. I'm trying to understand the difference between the fact that you walked away versus the fact that what if you got the money for it, but you're not worrying about it in the sense of like, okay, you got the pizza, you're not attached to it, you had the money for it, and you don't worry about the future, meaning as in how you're attaching like the future as in, okay, I don't have the money for this later, or all of that. You ate it, you enjoyed it, but you're not attached to it in the sense like, why can't it be like, oh, I'm grateful for the fact that I had the pizza now, and I had the money for it now, in the sense like, okay, God gave me the money for it now. I'm not attached to it. I'm not worried about the future about it, as in God gave me the money for it now. Thank you. Good day. You know, in the sense of like, I'll worry and have the faith in God for like taking care of me later, as in, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to worry about it. You're in the now. You're grateful for in the presence of it now, and you're no longer worried about the future. Like, I felt like that's what, or am I just, I don't know. We've talked about so much stuff now. I'm just kind of like confused. Like, I feel like you're trying to say in the presence of now, and you're like, hey, I have the money now. I'll enjoy it now. Thank you. I'm no longer attached to it, and I'm done. And I'm grateful. Thanks. You're just kind of like, I thought that's what.
Yeah, here's the trouble. Okay, there is a way of telling the story like you're struggling to do, where there's nothing wrong with it, because there is nothing wrong with it. Either way, no matter what, it just changes your experience of the moment. Okay, the right way, quote, to handle that is to invite the smell of pizza in, but don't let it remind you of an attachment. And when that attachment does arise in the mind, don't attach to it, let it pass, and be content with the beautiful day that smells like pizza. That's wonderful. Now, it is true. What's the big deal? I went to the monastery, I got my $20. I came back and I bought my piece of pizza, and the day was perfect, right? The problem with that is that in the future, your ego is going to tell you pizza makes the day perfect. Because you forgot that the day was already perfect, which caused you to go get the piece of pizza, right? So you forgot your nature. That's the problem. And in that forgetfulness of your nature, which is contentment and love and fullness, because you're infinite and mortal and can't be touched by the material in any way, you can only observe it, you know, by leaving that and associating yourself with the smell of pizza and the desire for pizza and the wants of the body. That's fine. That's you've enslaved yourself, but okay. So you chose to do that. We'll go with that. But then that makes the day imperfect because you have a desire, a want. Pizza will make this day better. And so then you're enslaved to go get this pizza so that the day can become better. When you eat that pizza and you've satisfied that desire, you will blame that satisfaction on eating pizza. But that satisfaction was already there before the pizza. And that's the part you will forget. And that's the part where you go unconscious. To create a desire, you need to forget yourself, who you really are, what you really are. In order to have a desire or to allow a desire to develop, you have to forget your nature. You have to, because you're ever present, ever free, ever blissful. What more do you want?
But I think what she might be also saying is that once it has happened, then you don't judge yourself anymore. You kind of say, you register it, and then you move on, and you reflected. You said, okay, I gave in to my desires at that point, and then you leave it. You surrender it at that time and go about your day, and you don't dwell on it.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, that's a good second place.
Yeah.
That's a good second place. If you've already made the mistakes, the fact that you realize them as a mistake, the fact that you go back and get your attention back again, you bring it back on the moment again. As long as you don't lose that attention, as long as you don't lose that awareness of your nature, everything is fine. And if you do for a moment and you go back and pick it up, everything is still fine. You're still going to feel a ripple of suffering from that. It's going to come back to you at some point because it's there. It's now part of your story.
Samskara.
Yeah, exactly. It's a samskara. And samskaras are going to have an effect in the future. That piece of pizza that day, even if you did it in awareness and consciousness, at some point, that smell of pizza is going to come back again. Or even worse, now it won't be the smell of pizza. It'll be just walking on the corner of Broadway and seeing the restaurant. And you've now got a memory about having gone in there and bought this delicious, greasy, drippy piece of pepperoni pizza that made a perfect day more perfect.
I remember, maybe a distant third. I remember one of the Swamis, I think it was Robert, and one of his things, he says, even if you find yourself in the shopping mall and shopping, he says, do it with awareness.
Yes.
Know that you're shopping and know that you are doing this with awareness and move on. So
yeah, nothing will get you out of a shopping mall faster than awareness. Nothing. That entire building. Oh my God. It's really a wonderful exercise. Boy, if you want to practice awareness, a shopping mall is perfect. Because if you look at the shopping mall, you will see how the world has studied your weakness and has designed an entire building around provoking it, about provoking your desires. You'll always notice they never put the up and down escalators next to each other. They always put them at opposite sides. Why? Because then you have to walk all around past all of those stores, and usually it's near the food court. That you have to walk all the way around to catch the down escalator. They never put them next to each other. And the colors that they're using, the music that's playing, the placement of the tables, every single thing in there, none of it is pure. All of it is put there to manipulate you. I read a wonderful in a psychology class way back in high school, back when I was still dodging dinosaurs. We studied the psychology of McDonald's and the colors. Why do they use yellow and red? Because people eat faster. Why do they attach the chairs to the floor? Why don't they just have regular chairs? Because they tilt the chairs just like 3 degrees or something forward so that you cannot get comfortable. You cannot sit back and lean back in a McDonald's restaurant chair and feel comfortable. They're designed to be comfortable enough to sit there and eat food without becoming aware of being uncomfortable. But they are not comfortable enough so that you can sit back and lean back and relax in them. They're meant to be uncomfortable toward your what do they call that? Loitering. So everything around you in these places has been thought about. The way they do the other one is grocery stores. You can always know the bread and the milk are in the farthest back corner of the grocery store, always. Why? Because they want you to walk back there and pass all the other food for impulse buying. All the bright and colorful boxes are at eye level. All the children's foods are at knee level. You know, candies, they've always got all those last minute grabby things right there by the register. You know, all the rags, the the news rags, all the candies are there, all the, you know, everything, all the impulse materials like, oh, that looks good, are there. And so this is why, you know, not to blame the store places, they're just trying to make money. But you see, this is the source of ego, and this is why it destroys. This is why it because its nature is to exploit. The ego exploits constantly. It exploits you, even though it's your own ego. It's exploiting you to maintain its own false sense of existence. And it does that by keeping you on the treadmill. I'm going to save you. I'm going to fix you. I'm going to hurt you. I hate you. I love you. All of those things the ego will use to keep you under control, to keep you seeking confidence through it, for you to keep seeking pleasure through it, for you to keep trying to solve your life through it, for you to keep finding God through it. You know, it doesn't care what it is. It's not going to avoid God. It can look at what it's been able to do with the thought of God in this world. My goodness, I don't think there is anything more dangerous than religion with ego in it. You know, that is probably one of the most powerful forces for evil in the world. It's killed millions of us, devastated millions of us, and created so much hate. Not because of the religion, that's not the bad part. It's because of ego mixed with religion, identity mixed with religion. You know, that's the poison arrow right there. How many wars, how many riots, how much individual hate has been caused by ego mixing with religion. It's a dangerous, dangerous thing. So this is why this call to observation, this call to awareness, look at the contents of your mind, look at the way your samskaras affect you, learn which samskaras are in there, see them, and feel them when they come to light. Feel that horrible, because it's a terrible sensation that we don't even pay attention to, that constriction. You know, so I talk with Vivekananda says, all expansion is life, all opening, you know, all broadening your horizons leads you to the truth. You know, it leads you to this awareness. But any of that smallness, that, you know, when lust first rises its head inside of you, if you're aware of that, if you're not aware, it just grows and suddenly it's just the big thing and it's driving you and you're into it and you're engaged and blah, blah, blah. And you're going to end up thinking it's a great thing, you know, because you'll indulge and you'll be like, oh, wow, what a great part of life. But if you're actually aware of when that first lustful thought comes to the mind, the sensation in the body is terrible, that constriction, the shoulders tighten, you know, the eyes become obsessive, you know, and once that algorithm starts running, you're not in charge at all. you're not in charge at all. And it's just gripping you, you know, and the only way you can become aware of that bondage is to try and stop, try and arrest that cycle that you've fulfilled over and over and over again in your life. You know, that's why this renunciation comes in, is very, very important, because once you become aware of the cycle, once you've discerned it and seen and feel and know the damage of it, know the pain of it, the habit's still going to remain. It's still going to push you in that direction. So you've got to bring in your renunciation. After discernment, after discrimination, it's time for dispassion, time for renunciation. You know, and that takes a certain amount of discipline, because it's the habit you're trying to break. You're trying to find your freedom. And fulfilling desires is not the definition of freedom. Being desireless is the definition of freedom. When you can sit anywhere at any time, regardless of circumstance, and reach into the bliss of being and find your deepest contentment and release your compassion, release your love. That's what we're going for. And it starts with being aware. It starts with being where you are fully and knowing the nature of these things. So he's looking for this. What do you mean by holes, and how do I find them? Well, look at the net and its many contradictions, all right? You do and undo at every step, right? That's exactly it. I remember when I was in high school, I wanted to be a famous actor, like everybody else in the suburbs. And so I would dream of that. And then, so then I had this audition that I had been asked to audition for by the director. Come audition for The Sound of Music. I have you in mind for such and such, Hans, or whatever his name was. And so I'm sitting in the parking lot after church with some friends, and we're just laughing and having a good old time. And I'm driving, so they're all in my car. And I look at my watch, and I've got to leave. I've got to go to my rehearsal, or not my rehearsal, my audition. But I was having so much fun with my friends, and I didn't want to have to end the whole thing by having to drive everybody home because I had to go to my rehearsal. So I just let it go, and I just missed my rehearsal. And now you see I'm not a famous actor because I missed that audition, you see. So you see, we live this life of contradiction. That's why I say God answers every prayer, every one of them, in the affirmative. He says yes to every one of them. Your life right now at this moment is the sum total of all your desires. And God fulfilled them all, but he fulfills them according to your awareness of them, according to the power with which they're prayed. So God says, oh, he wants to be a famous actor. Okay. Oh, he also wants to hang with his friends instead of going to the audition. Okay. We'll average those two together and you get the result. And so our life is the result of all of our actions. That's why Vivekananda says, the person who learns how to concentrate and how to control themselves can own the world. Just those two things. The person who learns to focus the mind, right? And the person who learns how to discipline himself, Maya will bow at his feet, I think is the words he uses. Maya will fall at your feet. And that's that awareness. That's that isness. So don't be contradictory. Don't pray for one thing and do another. A very, very important thing. As an Advaitist, you know that all your prayers are to yourself. Well, if you're praying, not to have not to have a glass of wine, don't buy a bottle of wine at the grocery store. But how many people who are trying to stop drinking have a bottle of wine in the house? How many people who want to lose weight have a box of cookies in the house? How many of us, it's like, stop the contradictions. The only way to stop the contradictions is to start paying attention and see them and understand you're your own problem. That ego is the root of your suffering. Your broken sense of what you are is the very heart of your suffering. So, and he lists that all here. And then he says, well, since my seeing the contradiction makes it go, is there no causal link between my seeing and its going? Maharaj, causality, even as a concept, does not apply to chaos. Now, what is he saying there? He's saying that there is no cause and effect in the world. This moment is the only thing that's real. For cause and effect, you need your past and your future, which are your attachments and your desires. Without them, there is no cause and effect. There is simply this constant flow, an unbroken flow of non-repeating change. Right? And he says elsewhere, he says, what you call cause and effect is merely repetition. Right? It's merely repetition. And so he goes, well, to what extent is desire a causal factor? Oh, one of many, Maharaj says. For everything there are innumerable causal factors, but the source of all that is the infinite possibility, the supreme reality, which is in you and which throws its power and light and love on every experience. But this source is not a cause, and no cause is a source. Because of that, I say everything is uncaused. You may try to trace how a thing happens, but you cannot find out why a thing is as it is. A thing is as it is because the universe is as it is. Right? In order to find cause, in order to determine cause and effect, you have to bring your blinders in, right? If you're going to say this causes this, you have to put a blinder just before that and just after that. And then you can see the cause and the effect. But this cause was the effect of another cause. And you're like, oh my gosh, we'll have to bring it out now because this caused this, which was then an effect. And then this effect became a cause and caused this. But wait, if I bring out this blinder, then that effect becomes a cause of yet another effect. And if you keep opening up your blinders, you realize just what he just said. A thing is as it is because the universe is as it is. Everything in the universe conspired for this one thing to be happening, for this one thing to be true. And if you chase the causes and effects, you realize they're illusory. Every cause is an effect, and every effect is a cause. Nothing is a cause, and nothing is an effect without being one or the other, until you get to the source. Until you get to the origin, which is God, which is this divine flowing of a constant stream of never repeating change, right? So, to what extent? He says, well, to the extent that you're under delusion. That's the world looks like it has causes and effects, karma. The world is karmic only as long as you're attached to your attachments, to your thoughts, to certain thoughts, and averted to other thoughts. But aversion is just the opposite side of attachment, same thing. So we've got these attachments. That's your causes. Your attachments are your cause, right? They make things happen. But what are you attached to? There's nothing there. It's a thought. It's illusory. And it comes from elsewhere. All right. So now, part 5.
Before we go on,
what's that?
I had a question. So when
Please.
he's in the questionnaire, when the one before the last, he says causality, even as a concept, does not apply to chaos. So when he is referring to chaos, and then he says in the next one that everything is the source. So we are basically saying that the source is the foundation of the chaos under delusion.
Yes.
And the
Well,
chaos that we experience on a daily basis, or what is even though it's the source. I mean, the source basically has no chaos, but it is seen as chaos until we reach the source, because there's no causality or effect of anything that is happening. Therefore, seen as chaos because they come by itself, the events and thoughts and actions.
Well, it's because it's viewed from a false perspective. It looks a certain way. If I understand what you're saying, it's like before Galileo, when they had to try to calculate the position of a planet, it took an enormous effort. Because from their perspective, like planets were moving like this, around themselves. They didn't move in ellipses because they were placing the Earth at the center of the universe. And they were trying to describe the movement of everything else in the universe with the Earth being the center, which fine, the Earth can be the center. I mean, how are you going to know what the center of the universe is? But when Galileo came along and said, no, the Earth isn't the center, the sun's the center, then all of a sudden, all of these radically difficult calculations became a simple ellipse. That was it. So us, from an ego perspective, where we exist, we are the center of the universe. It's chaos out there. It's chaos. They're chaotic. And from that, the mind's nature is to find pattern and to find repetitions, to find difference, and it goes about doing those and then finding relationships, but it's all very chaotic. We can't see what the truth is. We can't see up from down. It doesn't make sense because we've placed ourselves at the center and we've imagined ourselves to be a particular. When we return to the universal, the past and future pass away. There's not this chaos. There's the simple silence of being, the I am, the I that has been such a comfort to you your whole life, the center of everything that's ever happened to you. That becomes the dominant theme of the universe. That peace, that calmness, that isness that's at the core of you being you, right? And when we return to that view of self, which is the capital S self, the universal, the infinite, the immortal, the chaos of the universe disappears and becomes the unchanging absolute of the moment, the perfect noun of love, wisdom, and existence.
Okay, yeah, I see. Thank you.
Sure.
Mhm.
All right, so what is, well, actually, it's time to end already. It's 10 o'clock. Wow. You guys are so lucky I have a clock. I would just literally ramble on all day. It's funny. I've never enjoyed anything so much in my life as I do doing these things, talking about these things. So I subject everybody to rambling. Anyway, any more questions or any more insights or new theories?
I do have a question, but if
Please.
somebody else does not, which I've been, I think, hammering at you in your blogs.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to, when I witness, I've been trying to figure out the exact, not definition, but clarity on witnessing. So one is as a witness, when you are you are the subject, and you are aware of yourself as the subject, as you look on thoughts and the world as object. That's one kind of witnessing. While there's the other kind of witnessing where you are apart from the subject and the object, and all one is experiencing is the experiencing, right? You stand apart.
Yes.
Both of them would qualify as being a witness, but when we talk about ourselves as being the witness, are we talking about both the stances? Are we talking about the second stance? Okay.
Yeah. The second one, the first one, you've objectified your attention.
Right.
And so you're no longer being aware of awareness. You've objectified awareness, and you're now observing it. And so you're
almost a step closer, because usually when one sees without awareness, one becomes the object. You even
Right.
lose yourself as the subject, right? So if I'm seeing something, I have lost awareness of myself, and I'm totally immersed in the object. But
Mhm.
if you take one step backwards, then you are aware of yourself as the subject, witnessing the object. But then in the third, you are totally within the space, within the inner space, and you objectify both.
Yeah, I
Or
think
objectify but experience.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, the first one's going to lead to the second one. It's a matter of the habit of how we think, it seems to me. It's a habit of the way that we think, that we're constantly objectifying anything we think about. And it's important to know that observing is not thinking about something, right? So it's a different thing. Observation doesn't have any calculating process, any cognitive practice in the mind except silence, the need to shut up so that you can observe without opinion or without any analysis. And in that observation, then, what are you becoming aware of? This is the thing that I've run up against, and so I might be asking the same questions you are. This notion of we have to invent, or we have to stumble upon a whole new way of being, of using our mind, of relating to our thoughts, of relating to experience, where we don't objectify it all, but we use everything that we're normally engaged in, instead of being engaging in all of it, we're using it as a reflection of an awareness. So we're trying to intuit an awareness from the things that we're normally engaged in. We're using them as a mirror to reflect back our observation, so that we become aware of the observation. We become aware of our own observerhood, but not because of anything, and not for anything, and not separate, which is why it can't be objectified. We can't put it in front of ourselves, because then it becomes separate, and we're no longer talking about the observer. We're talking about the observer as subject, you know. But to be in a state of openness, which is just a constant intuitive knowing of observation, and seeing everything coming and going, but with not the focus on the coming and going, but on the observing, that will unlock these subtleties that are necessary. It unlocks the subtleties of what's actually happening. You'll see things in a very different way. But it also betrays to you all of the holes in your net, the contradictions in your thinking. It betrays to you the lies, the insincerities that we see. Like, I've really discovered in myself that I've got some subtle things going on inside that to move me toward my desires without it becoming a conscious movement toward my desires. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I've caught an undercurrent of thinking that stays out of my awareness, that stays because I wouldn't allow it if I was aware of it. You know, like, but I lie. I find that even even still, which may not be so surprising to many, but to me it was quite surprising. I was like, oh my God, look at that. And I found when I started becoming aware of it, that my first reaction was to lie about it to myself. Like, oh no, that can't, you know, you can't live like that. That's too much. You know, that's going too far. You know, or, oh no, I'm not really thinking that. I know I don't really intend that. But if you sit there in honesty and just keep staring at it, you're like, oh my God, I do intend that. I am thinking that. And it's very difficult to acknowledge that, because it's not part of your ego self. It's not part of what you think about yourself. The ego has lied and made you the second best person in the world, you know, next to whoever you might grudgingly think better than yourself, you know. But all of us have a very high opinion of ourselves, you know, from some point of perspective, and all of us think our story is utterly worthwhile, you know, and that's part of the need of ego. And so we will die for that story. You know, we will die for that story. And yeah. I don't know where I was going.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was. It just. Yeah.
Yeah. Just the thing is to sit and be quiet enough until you see the enjoyment of being.
Yeah.
To discern enough until you see the joy of pleasure and pain. To see the joy of this constant stream of mystery, of things that we'll never be able to figure out, that the mind will never be able to contain. And just to enjoy that state of acceptance, that state of openness, and the response of wisdom and love that comes from within. The joy of as a vehicle, just observing that nature arise once you've started to allow it to arise and to permeate the mind, to permeate your action. It's a wonderful thing, because you're watching God manifest in the most intimate of ways, in your very self, your very being, you know. And when, oh my goodness. Yes, that's the opportunity at hand. That's life. That's when you begin to live. You know, right now we're dead. we're lost in an echo chamber of an ego, and we can't find joy spontaneously for no reason. That's the beauty of the promise of Advaita, is that your ecstasy has no cause. It is. It doesn't have to be maintained or built or constructed or composited. It is what you are. It is your nature. And to know that is to be spontaneously blissful, spontaneously loving, spontaneously, compassionate. So this is what we're missing out on by driving our car on the fuel of desire. We miss everything. It's like the difference in driving a bicycle and a car. You realize when you ride a bicycle on the same route that you ride a car on, you realize on a bicycle, you're actually there. You can feel the wind, you can smell the air, you can feel the temperature, you're part of the weather, you're part of the environment. In the car, you're in the ego. The car is the temperature you set it to, the noise is what the radio is on. There's no wind, there's no smells because the car's there and you've got your deodorizer hanging from the rearview mirror. Right? And in most of our lives, we go from one fake environment to the next all day long. We never experience reality. We've got our house, which is set up just so, with the environment controlled, everything controlled. We get in our car, which is an extension of that. We back out of the driveway into a neighborhood that's exactly the same design. We drive to an artificial office and sit on artificial fabrics in little cubicles through the day. Totally controlled artificial environment. We walk out of that, we go to our gym, totally controlled and artificial environment. We walk out of that, we come back, our garage door swallows us up for the evening, and we walk into our final controlled environment. And we're looking for something real. Where is that something real? Let go of that control. Open your windows of awareness. Smell what is and know it to be perfect. All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shama.
Shama.
Be well.